This is day 7 of the January and February 7-day retreat 92 in Springwater. There were quite a number of unanswered questions. A few people reminded me of them, and we discussed it a bit in the meetings, on freedom, on time. I didn't know whether to have another talk or to go back to what I usually do, that is read. I decided to read. I haven't had any complaints about it, except I received a strong one in California this past December. One person urging me not to bring in books, but to talk myself. But it's very relaxing for me not to have to talk in the usual way, which is arduous. And people who have come here either for the first time or for many times in the past have found these readings to be helpful. I could spend more time to find new ones. Today there will be a new book added, which was given to me, poems by Mary Oliver. I'll read 4 or 5 of those. The first selections will be from Wang Po, a Chinese Zen teacher about 1,000 years ago in China, and Krishna Modi, and then Mary Oliver. Since the material is copyrighted, this is being taped, but it will not be for sale. First book is called The Zen Teaching of Wang Po, translated by John Blofeld. Being a Zen teacher, the tradition in which Wang Po taught was Buddhist, so he uses the words Buddha not just to refer to the historical personage of Gautama Buddha, but Buddha meaning truth, awakened mind, the absolute, undividedness, the unborn, all of these expressions summarized in this word Buddha, which in itself in Sanskrit means awakened. Seeking to become a Buddha, seeking to become an enlightened being. Well, maybe we comment as we go. Written down, these sermons and dialogues are written down by Wang Po's disciple, who was a Buddhist scholar studying the scriptures, and also the governor of the province where Wang Po taught. The master said to me, "All the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow, and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it, for that is using the Buddha to seek for the Buddha and using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, the Buddha will appear before them. For this mind is the Buddha, and the Buddha is all living beings. It is not the less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. Mind is like the void in which there is no confusion or evil. As when the sun wheels through it, shining upon the four corners of the world. For when the sun rises and illuminates the whole earth, the void gains not in brilliance. And when the sun sets, the void does not darken. The phenomena of light and dark alternate with each other, but the nature of the void remains unchanged. So it is with the mind of the Buddha and of sentient beings. If you look upon the Buddha as presenting a pure, bright, or enlightened appearance, or upon sentient beings as presenting a foul, dark, or mortal-seeming appearance, these conceptions resulting from attachment to form will keep you from supreme knowledge. Knowledge here does not mean memory or intellect. Even after the passing of as many eons as there are sands in the Ganges, there is only the one mind and not a particle of anything else on which to lay hold. If you students of the way do not awake to this mind, substance, or essence, one could say, you will overlay mind with conceptual thought, you will seek the Buddha outside yourselves, and you will remain attached to forms, pious practices, and so on, all of which are harmful and not at all the way to supreme knowledge. Knowledge here not meaning accumulated wisdom, accumulated thought, the way we use knowledge. Supreme insight. Incidentally, I have abbreviated this. I'm not reading whole, sometimes not even whole sentences. I take out words sometimes or paragraphs. This is not to represent Huang Po, but to look together in the light of his words. This is a dialogue between Huang Po and Pei Su. Took place 1,000 years ago, which will show very clearly that there is no time. What is the way, asks Pei Su. What is the way, and how must it be followed? Huang Po says, what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? Pei Su, what instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Huang Po, words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner, if those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Huang Po, if they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less Can they find a teaching worth of their attention elsewhere? Or a truth? Dharma is usually teaching. Do not look to what is called the true teaching by preachers, for what sort of true teaching could that be? Questioner, if that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Wangpo, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner, but in this way everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Wangpo, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Questioner, since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? The logic of the intellect, if there's nothing to seek, there is nothing. Wangpo says, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? And the void here does not mean vacuous, empty space, but whatever is there without categorizing, putting into boxes, labeling, rejecting, resisting, grasping. That makes for the 10,000 things. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Whatever's there. Not just in front of your eyes, also within. There's no separation between inside and outside when this looking takes place, this listening, looking, which is not just with the eyes and ears. Questioner, do you mean that we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Wangpo, I have not prevented you. But concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the Dharma, to the truth, to the teaching? Should we avoid any feeling in relation to it? And Wangpo says, where no feeling arises, who can say that you're right? Pei-Su, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? And Wangpo says, you're a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? It's today, isn't it? We feel and think like this today. Somebody says, it's not this, it's not this. And then we think we're doing something wrong. We're bad. We're at fault. We're mistaken. And because we think we're mistaken and we feel bad about it, we don't listen. In all simplicity. Not just to the words. Maybe there's something deeper than the words. Question, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the truth to us. Wangpo, in truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of true teaching can you go seeking for? Pei-Su, since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo, observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. It doesn't mean shut yourself off other people, I think. I have a hunch he means teachers of truth or people who would have strong opinions, influence us. Of course we pay attention to other people. We are these other people. It's not an instruction, don't pay attention to other people, lock yourself into a hermitage. It doesn't mean that. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Later on, Pesu says, from all you have said, mind is the Buddha. But it is not clear as to what sort of mind is meant by this mind which is the Buddha. And Huang Po asks, how many minds have you got? Questioner, but is the Buddha the ordinary mind or the enlightened mind? Huang Po, where on earth do you keep your ordinary mind and your enlightened mind? Question, in the teachings of the three vehicles, it is stated that there are both. Why does your reverence deny it? Huang Po, in the teaching of the three vehicles, that's a Buddhist scripture, it is clearly explained that the ordinary and enlightened minds are illusions. You don't understand. All this clinging to the idea of things existing is to mistake vacuity for the truth. How can such conceptions not be illusory? Being illusory, they hide mind from you. If you would only rid yourselves of the concepts of enlightened and ordinary, you would find that there is no other Buddha than the Buddha in your own mind. You people go on misunderstanding. You hold on to concepts such as ordinary and enlightened, directing your thoughts outwards where they gallop about like horses. All this amounts to beclouding your own minds. As soon as thought or sensation arises, you fall into dualism. Beginningless time and the present moment are the same. Beginningless time and the present moment are the same. There is no this and no that. To understand this truth is called complete and unexcelled enlightenment. Question, upon what doctrine does your reverence base these words? Huang Po, why seek a doctrine? As soon as you have a doctrine, you fall into dualistic thought. Question, but just now you said that the beginningless past and the present are the same. What do you mean by that? Huang Po, it is just because of your seeking that you make a difference between them. It'll take me time to understand. In the future life, maybe I'll understand, maybe not in this one. That's how we think. And that creates time. Away from this instant of no time. If you were to stop seeking, Huang Po says, how could there be any difference between them? Question, if they are not different, why did you employ separate terms for them? Huang Po, if you hadn't mentioned ordinary and enlightened, who would have bothered to say such things? Just as those categories have no real existence, so mind is not really mind. Comes a point we've got to drop all words. And then where are we? He says, as both mind and those categories are really illusions, wherever can you hope to find anything? Once I put this question to the Master, how many of the 400 or 500 persons gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. Discuss it as you may, says Wangpo later, how can you even hope to approach the truth through words? So full understanding can come to you only through an inexpressible mystery. The approach to it is called the gateway of the stillness beyond all activity. If you wish to understand, know that a sudden comprehension comes when the mind is purged of all the clutter of conceptual and discriminatory thought activity. Those who seek the truth by means of intellect and learning only get further and further away from it. Not till your thoughts cease all their branching here and there, not till you abandon all thoughts of seeking for something, will you be on the right road. Truth is something never lost, even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. Absolute means not depending on anything. Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. It's the last selection. But how can we prevent ourselves from falling into the error of making distinctions between this and that? It's not a making of distinctions. Of course, a microphone is different from a cup or a flower. But the grasping or the rejecting from a center, me. By realizing, says Wangpo, by realizing that though you eat the whole day through, no single grain has passed your lips. Feeding ourselves with words, sometimes not grains, but words. No single grain has passed your lip, and that a day's journey has not taken you a single step forward. You're still just walking now. And what is walking? Also, by uniformly abstaining from such notions as self and other, do not permit the events of your daily lives to bind you, but never withdraw yourselves from them. Let's not say never. There are occasions when one withdraws oneself from them. But when one is there, not to let oneself be bound through resistance or grasping, thinking about it. Well, whatever. Only thus can you earn the title, he says, of a liberated one, which is, I put that in parentheses and now I read it. Do we need a title? Because this is what we're all after. Never allow yourselves to mistake outward appearance for reality. Usually we project our ideas on outward appearance, and so we don't see anything but our ideas and a little bit of something else. Avoid the error of thinking in terms of past, present, and future. The past has gone, the present is a fleeting moment, and the future has not yet come. When you practice meditation, sit in the proper position. Whatever that is. One has to find out for oneself at each particular moment what is the proper position. Could be an armchair that supports the back, feet up. What's the state of the mind? Stay perfectly tranquil, he says. Stay perfectly. We don't stay perfectly tranquil. So can we draw perfect What does it mean to stay tranquil? Not to find fault with anything that's going on? Not down on oneself, up on oneself. Just what's there. It's simple, but it's not easy. Do not permit the least movement of your minds to disturb you. This alone is what is called liberation. Be diligent, be diligent. This selection is a book called Questions and Answers, Krishna Modi. It is published by the Krishna Modi Foundation, India, in the 60s. Questioner, or it's called Beyond Measure. The questioner says, I think I can solve my problems. I do not need any help. I have the energy to do it, but beyond this I come to receive. And if you do not like that word, then to share something measureless to man, something that has great depth and beauty. Can you share that with me? Okay. One's problems can be solved without the help of others. They are created by oneself in relationship to another, and however subtle, however superficial or great, they can be solved if one applies one's mind and heart to resolving them. But the questioner wants to go much further. He comes here to share something he calls measureless to man. In Coleridge's words, something beyond all measure, something that is not given in churches. The first thing is to be clear as to what we mean by measure, because he uses the word measureless. Distance can be measured. So-called progressive evolution can be measured. One was this yesterday. Through meeting the present yesterday is modified and gives the movement to the future. That can be measured. Thought is a material process which can be measured. The superficiality of one's thinking, the deeper and the deepest thoughts. The more and the less can always be measured. Comparison is a process of measurement. Imitation and conformity can be measured. As long as there is measurement, the mind can only function in that measurement. The mind, the brain, through training and custom, have fallen into the habit of measurement. Is there something which is not measurable? Is there such a thing? Can the mind, the brain, and the heart, they're all one, can that whole structure be free of measurement? The brain, which has evolved through time, millions and millions of years, is the common brain of humanity. We may not like to realize this because we are accustomed to the idea that our brains are individual. That concept of individuality has been the tradition through millennia. That brain is constantly measuring. The more, the less, the better, the best. It is constantly functioning in that pattern. But the questioner comes to share something measureless to human beings. How then are we going to find out if there is something beyond all measure, that is beyond all time, because time is measurement, time is movement, thought is movement, time is thought. Thought is born out of memory, experience, knowledge. This is a material process because in the very cells of the brain, memories are stored. Everything that the brain creates is a material process. Insight is total perception of the whole complex movement of measurement. You can only have that insight when you perceive without previous knowledge. For if you're using knowledge, then it is comparative. It is measurable. Insight is not measurable. When there is measureless insight, the unfolding of the whole movement of comparison is not only seen but ends immediately. You can test it. You do not have to accept the speaker's word for it. So what is beyond measure? To find out, can there be freedom from fear, the deep-rooted, conscious or unconscious fears? Fear is something that can be observed and resolved, because the root of fear, not the various branches and the leaves of that tree, the root of fear is time. One is afraid of tomorrow, one is afraid of what has happened. The physical pain which one has had is gone, but the fear that it might occur again remains. Psychologically, one has done something wrong, dishonorable, and there is fear. Psychologically, fear is time. I'm afraid of dying. I'm living now, but I dread what might happen. That is measurement of time. The root of fear is time and thought. To have an insight into that is the ending of fear. He says here, totally. I would say at that instant. The ending of fear means the understanding of time and the ending of sorrow. If the mind and the brain are cleared of sorrow and fear, then there may be something other. But we want to be assured of it. We want it guaranteed, like a good watch. That is the commercial mentality. There is no guarantee, and that is the beauty of it. This one has to do for itself, not for a reward. And that is very difficult for most people. If one is given something in exchange, then it is an act of measurement. So can the mind be free of all measurement, especially in your relationship to another, which is more difficult? When one is free of measurement, then something totally different takes place. When that which has taken place beyond measure is described, it is no longer measureless. You can describe the mountain, the shape of it, the line of it, the shadows. You can paint it, make a poem about it, but all that is not the mountain. We sit in the valley and say, please tell us about the mountain. We do not walk there. We want to be comfortable. There is something beyond all measure. This is from Krishna Modi's notebook, written in the 60s, this one in India. Across the river, smoke was going up in a straight column. It was a simple movement bursting into the sky. There wasn't a breath of air, there wasn't a ripple on the river, and every leaf was still. The parrots were the only noise movement as they flashed by. Even the little fisherman's boat did not disturb the water. Everything seemed to have frozen in stillness, except the smoke. Even though it was going so straight up in the sky, there was a certain gaiety in it and freedom of total action. And beyond the village and the smoke was the glowing sky of the evening. It had been a cool day, and the sky had been open, and there was the light of 1,000 winters. It was short, penetrating, and expansive. It went with you everywhere. It wouldn't leave you. Like perfume, it was in the most unexpected places. It seemed to have entered into the most secret recesses of one's being. It was a light that left no shadow, and every shadow lost its depth. Because of it, all substance lost its density. It was as though you looked through everything, through the trees on the other side of the wall, through your own self. Yourself was as transparent as the sky and as open. It was intense, and to be with it was to be passionate, not the passion of feeling or desire, but a passion that would never wither or die. It was a strange light. It exposed everything, and it made vulnerable, and what had no protection was love. You couldn't be what you were burnt out without leaving any ashes, and unexpectedly, there was not a thing but that light. This book of poems by Mary Oliver is called House of Light. Spring. Somewhere, a black bear has just risen from sleep and is staring down the mountain. At night, in the brisk and shallow restlessness of early spring, I think of her 4 black fists flicking the gravel, her tongue like a red fire touching the grass, the cold water. There's only one question: how to love this world. I think of her rising like a black and leafy ledge to sharpen her claws against the silence of the trees. Whatever else my life is, with its poems and its music and its glass cities, it is also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing and tasting. All day I think of her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. Singapore. In Singapore, in the airport, a darkness was ripped from my eyes. In the women's restroom, one compartment stood open. A woman knelt there washing something in the white bowl. Disgust argued in my stomach, and I felt in my pocket for my ticket. A poem should always have birds in it. Kingfishers, say, with their bold eyes and gaudy wings. Rivers are pleasant, and of course trees. A waterfall, or if that's not possible, a fountain rising and falling. A person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. When the woman turned, I could not answer her face. Her beauty and her embarrassment struggled together, and neither could win. She smiled and I smiled. What kind of nonsense is this? Everybody needs a job. Yes, a person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. But first we must watch her as she stares down at her labor, which is dull enough. She is washing the tops of the airport ashtrays, as big as hubcaps, with a blue rag. Her small hands turn the metal, scrubbing and rinsing. She does not work slowly nor quickly, but like a river. Her dark hair is like the wing of a bird. I don't doubt for a moment that she loves her life. And I want her to rise up from the crust and the slop and fly down to the river. This probably won't happen, but maybe it will. If the world were only pain and logic, who would want it? Of course it isn't. Neither do I mean anything miraculous, but only the light that can shine out of a life. I mean the way she unfolded and refolded the blue cloth, the way her smile was only for my sake. I mean the way this poem is filled with trees and birds. Writing poems. This morning, I watched the pale green cones of the rhododendrons opening their small pink and red blouses. The bodies of the flowers were instantly beautiful to the bees. They hurried out of that dark place in the thick tree, one after another, an invisible line upon which their iridescence caught fire as the sun caught them sliding down. Is there anything more important than hunger and happiness? Each bee entered the frills of a flower to find the sticky fountain, and if some dust spilled on the walkways of the petal and caught onto their bodies, I don't know. I don't know if the bees know that otherwise death is everywhere, even in the red swamp of a flower. But they did this with no small amount of desperation, you might say love. And the flowers, as daft as mud, poured out their honey. The notebook. 6 a.m. The small pond turtle lifts its head into the air like a green toe. It looks around. What it sees is the whole world swirling back from darkness, a red sun rising over the water, over the pines, and the wind lifting, and the water striders heading out, and the white lilies opening their happy bodies. The turtle doesn't have a word for any of it. The silky water, or the enormous blue morning, or the curious affair of its own body. On the shore, I'm so busy scribbling and crossing out, I almost miss seeing him. I almost miss seeing him paddle away through the wet, black forest. More and more the moments come to me. How much can the right word do? Now a few of the lilies are a faint flamingo inside their white hearts, and there is still time to let the last roses of the sunrise float down into my uplifted eyes. Finches. Ice in the woods, snow in the fields, a few finches singing. I look up in time to see their raspberry-colored faces and the black tears on their breasts. Of course, they're just trying to stay alive like the frozen river and the crows. But who would guess that the way they dangle the bright necklaces of their music from the top of the trees? Before nightfall, they'd better find where the last spray of seeds have fallen. They'd better find shelter from the wind. And there they go, tiny rosettes of energy, as though nothing in this world was frightening, as though the only thing that mattered was to praise the world sufficiently, as though they were only looking light-heartedly for the next tree in which to sing. And here I am at home again, out of the snowy fields, where I will take off my jacket and sit down at the table and go over my verses again. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? we will end here for today.